Good afternoon from Europe and to all of those tuning in from Europe, and good morning to our audiences in North America. Welcome to this joint discussion co-hosted by the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, ISPI, and the Wilson Center. I'm Marissa Khurma, and I'm the director of the Middle East program at the Wilson Center. We're delighted to be working together with ISPI, which, akin to the Wilson Center, is a leading independent and nonpartisan think tank globally. We will be discussing the geopolitics of new technologies in the wider Mediterranean region that includes Europe, but also the Middle East and North Africa. And as we will hear from our speakers this afternoon, the rapidly changing technological advances in the landscape is definitely shaping and constantly reshaping the region's economy, but also and specifically the energy sectors. And that comes with tremendous opportunities for partnerships, but of course comes with its own set of challenges, particularly given some of the supply chain issues that we've seen that are exacerbated by current conflicts and developments in the region, as well as the cost of scaling up and other more long-term risks associated with when it comes to dependencies and monopolies. I'm going to leave the discussion to the experts, so I'd like to welcome Francesco Rocchetti, who's the ISPI Secretary General and also runs the Rome Med Dialogues. Mothanna Gharaibeh, who is the former Minister of the Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship in Jordan and an expert on the new technological landscape across the MENA region. And last but not least, my colleague from the Middle East Institute, Mohammed Soliman, who is the Tech Program Director at the Middle East Institute and is also an expert on the geopolitics and technology across the region. Without further ado, I'm going to pass this on to you, Francesco. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa, and we're really delighted as well to co-organize this panel together with the Wilson Center. So today discussion is I think we're gonna speak about many things that are hot issues now in the region and in the world. I will begin by Mothanna asking something about, of course, the digital revolution. We know, and in a way we can say that the digital revolution began in Jordan a few years back. It was one of the first digital countries that moved its first steps in that world. Of course, now many things have changed. So I would ask you to describe us a bit how the landscape in the region has changed and who are the new leading actors and players in this digital transition.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Marissa and Francisco, for the opportunity to speak today. And it's a great pleasure to be with you. I mean, we've started, yes, not few, quite enough years before, maybe 25 years. I mean, when His Majesty King Abdullah took over in 1999, he believed that technology is the way forward. Small countries like Jordan has small room for maneuvering without using their biggest asset, the people. And technology is a tool for justice. It allows opportunities when resources are scarce. We don't have oil, we don't have any natural resources, but the people. And those people have managed to contribute to the global prosperity and growth. And I mean, in the last 5 years, for example, we've been growing our digitally enabled jobs by 19% year over year. Cisco, Microsoft, Expedia, Amazon, and believe me, those people are not there for charity. They're there because they can find value in the people of Jordan. And now with the supply chain challenges and with the great polarization between East Asia and the US, Europe, and Japan, there's a great room and for opportunity for countries like Jordan and Egypt and other countries in the Middle East to become resilience partners. Exiting East Asia is going to be costly to the Western businesses per se. And they need to find replacement with cost-efficient labor that are hungry to find jobs, that are capable, that are geographically located in closer areas, who could work in the same time zones, who could work on different days. It just works. And technology is allowing a lot of opportunities for us, and we're using them. Champions, there are different kinds of champions. I mean, in the Middle East itself, there are champions that have the talent, the resource hubs that are supplying the resources for the uprising of technology in the Middle East: Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco. And there are champions who have the budgets to spend to explore new things and afford the cost to fail, like Saudi, UAE, and others. Because, I mean, there is some integration that's are helping them to explore and us to find opportunities to put our resources into good use.
Well, if I think about the technology these days, I think also of the most valuable company on earth. I mean, in the stock markets, and we know NVIDIA, and it's a producer of semiconductors. So I would ask Mohammed a bit to explain us. Of course, semiconductors is not something heavily produced in the Middle East, we can say, but the Middle East has some potential in the critical mineral resources. And so how is the Middle East, the Mediterranean region is placed in this race for, of course, grabbing and taking and obtaining and working and refining these resources? Mohammed.
Actually, you made my job easy with your brief remarks. So let me start by thanking you for organizing this, ISPI and Wilson Center. To your question, few things. Semiconductor, as you mentioned, is a very concentrated industry, mostly a very thin, layered supply chain from North America to Europe to East Asia, very concentrated. However, the Gulf states particularly have been making inroads in the industry through, first of all, financing. So this is why I'm not surprised that the UAE did major investment in global foundries almost 15 years ago or 18 years ago, with an eye on how semiconductors will be shaping the future of geopolitics and economy. Two, you're also seeing a lot of interest in R&D, right? It's very hard to have factories outside of those sort of countries with high concentration of semiconductor capabilities, but R&D research centers that are now starting opening up in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Riyadh. That's a phenomenon that we're seeing. Three, the fact that Gulf has what we call fiscal spending flexibility, that they're able to spend massively on massive projects with massive visionary projects, if I have to say. So the Gulf right now, they are focusing on partnership with countries like Zambia and Congo when it comes to critical minerals and building refineries for those sort of rare earth materials. So that basically started to turn the Gulf into a point of interest in the semiconductor supply chain. Not, of course, not on the same bar as Korea, Japan, of course, but that's a major start that we are seeing. And there's also no surprise that someone like Sam Altman is going to the UAE every now and then, because he's thinking about the UAE as a potential partner for his own semiconductor alliance that he's trying to build. So clearly, even though, like we said, the semiconductor industry is very concentrated, there's major attempts by Gulf states, Syria and Saudi Arabia, to be a major player in that sort of space, either through finance or investing in minerals or having R&D or even hosting human talent on their own in their own countries to be working on these sort of issues.
Mothanna, how do you see it? I mean, it's, of course, the Gulf plays a very crucial role. Are there other countries, Middle East, North Africa, and playing or trying to play or planning or willing to play a different role in this, of course, new stream and revenue stream and business stream, which is the semiconductor industry? How do you see it, Mothanna?
Thank you. It's actually now my mission in life. That's my daily job. I work 16 hours a day on that. I mean, the semiconductor supply chain is very complicated, very heavy, and it's mainly three pieces. Pre-silicon, which is design, verification, R&D, which is building the IP, and the barrier to entry is engineers, tools, and training. And, Jordan has the highest number of engineers per capita on earth. I mean, and we have 2 teams for Synopsys already working, and we're working with some global companies. I've been in the US for 40 days a month ago, to explore this. That's one. Second thing is the wafer fabrication, which can never happen in Jordan or the Middle East per se. I mean, the US is trying to pull it out from China and East Asia. Europe has built their CHIPS Act to pull it out, to pull it back. And as we speak, there are 50 fabrication sites in Europe, as we speak right now, and there are more being built. But as you know, most of the advanced chips are built, fabricated in Taiwan. Then we go to the second part of the supply chain, the third part of the supply chain, which is packaging and testing, where you take the wafers and you cut them, make sure you test them and package them and send them through the equipment manufacturers. That usually happens from Taiwan to Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. And my plan, my pitch, we had a European Jordanian business forum last week, actually, talking about this. And there was a session exactly about this, how Jordan could be the Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam for Europe. I mean, we are very close. We have free trade agreements. We have energy that's sustainable, 30% renewable. So anybody who wants to go to net zero by 2050 could use the cost-efficient labor, the resilient advanced infrastructure, the geographical proximity, the political stability, the political alliances between Jordan and the Western countries. So it just makes full sense. I have actually hired, IFC have hired IBM to make an assessment of the feasibility between Jordan and different competitor countries. And a good surprise that Jordan was ahead in profitability against all the others. Definitely not the perfect. I mean, there are countries who have been doing this for 50 years. They'll be more advanced in the skills, whatever. But the profitability will compensate, and we'll find our strategic partners to do this in Jordan. Thank you for the question. It is exactly what I've been doing for the last year.
No, it's interesting, and I would like to know more a bit about what you call the competitors of Jordan. So the other countries trying to work and to enter in this new stream.
Can I show a slide?
I don't know if you managed to, but if you don't, can you mention, I mean, just to have a glimpse on what are the things and how things are moving in the region?
Well, actually, I mean, it's not only the region. I mean, there are countries who are trying to do that. Poland, Hungary, Malaysia, Mexico, India, Egypt, China, India, and UAE. And those countries have different strengths. Jordan has the renewable energy, the advanced infrastructure, the high availability of talent, and free trade agreement, and the cost efficiency. Other countries have some different stuff. Subsidies could be the thing. I mean, China subsidizes the industry more than anybody else. I mean, the CHIPS Act was created in the US to try to bring the industry back to the US. It's $50 billion for 5 years. Do you know how much China has been spending on subsidies for the last 3 years? They spend $65 billion a year. It's huge. It's huge. So that's information I've got from Chris Miller, the author of Chips War. So this is the next big thing. The next Cold War or World War would be about computing power. And computing power can only be done by having the right skills for this industry. The industry will need 1 million engineers in the next 6 years. By 2030, they will hire an additional 1 million engineer. This 1 million engineer, there is an expected shortage of 300K right now. Universities on earth will not graduate enough engineers for the industry. This is not the most attractive industry. People go software. It's easier to get money, and it's more easy to change jobs. So there will be a shortage of 300K. I'm sure India will take most of the biggest percentage of the 1 million, maybe 800, 750K. There's still 250,000 engineers that are needed. Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco can supply them. Even when, I mean, as Mohammed said, Saudi has done a fund to create 50 semiconductor design companies. And they have mentioned, I mean, I've seen their leaders on LinkedIn saying, we're welcoming Jordanians, Palestinians, Egyptians to come on board. They will need the engineers. And it's a very good integration between our engineers and their spending capabilities. I mean, they have the fiscal space to try new things, and we have the guts to try new things. Together, we can contribute and make this supply chain more resilient and more prosperous.
No, very interesting, and thank you. I will go back to Mohammed. of course, when you think about the Middle East and in particular the Gulf, the region you mentioned before, and its strength, you think about, of course, fossil fuels, energy, let's say in a broader, with a broader term. But of course, technology is playing a bigger and bigger role, not as big as energy, and we don't know when and if this could happen. So I would ask you on, let's say, fossil fuel, rentier economies, and especially energy transition, how power dynamics are like changing this discourse, and technology might be something that goes into it.
I mean, excellent question and also tough. So let me take a crack at it. A few points to raise. I am speaking here as engineer. Computing power.
Point one, point two. It's in a magnificent engineering process. I love it.
Number one, cheap energy is still tied to computing power, right? One of the biggest problems that we have here in North America is how much energy can you spare for computing power? We read the statistics about how generative AI models consume in terms of energy. And right now we are at capacity in North America, we're at capacity in Europe. You cannot really spare more than 2 or 3 or 4% of your national electricity grid. Clearly that stands out in the Gulf. And what's the metric for that? Go through all the announcements about new cloud, hyperscaler cloud regions in the Gulf, particularly in Saudi, UAE, Qatar, and to some extent Kuwait, right? It indicates that there's a more interest in those countries because of the idea that you're able to secure cheap energy for cloud region. And now, and this is the third point, we are moving more and more towards cloud-based infrastructure, right? When it comes to AI, when it comes to computing power. So this is where you see the advantage of the Gulf as a traditional carbon producer getting more advantage based on that, because it's not surprised that G42 and Microsoft did their own deal. And a few years ago, we had the Aramco-Google agreement. So clearly, there's a move towards that sort of direction, and it's very much tied to the idea of cheap energy, secure energy in the Gulf. So this is about the first half of your question about energy and AI. On the second part, which is basically about renewables, I think it's a push and pull situation everywhere around the world as we speak. And you and I were in Brussels last weekend, and some of the questions that we had in Brussels among friends and colleagues, green transition is very difficult to pull off, right? It's extremely difficult because it comes with a cost to your industrial base. It comes with a problem when it comes to your housing. Think about the Netherlands. There's a major problems in the Netherlands when it comes to building, there's a housing crisis almost because you're not able to build more houses because you're still restricted by carbon emissions, right? So there's not only a hit to your industrial base, but also there's a hit to your social situation. And on top of that, it also makes you vulnerable in a geopolitical sense. I mean, the discussions about China as a partner, a green partner, I mean, it's one-sided, right? Of course, there's a climate aspect of it when it comes to having cleaner energy, having clean EV, clean solar panels. But what's the geopolitical implications of being over-reliant on a green partner? So those are the sort of questions that policymakers in the Gulf have been struggling with, of course. But I think in their case, the situation is a bit different. For now, they are energy producers. They are not going to get rid of energy production levels. This is something they're going to continue doing. However, in parallel track, they're going to be investing massively in their own renewable infrastructure when it comes to solar and when it comes to wind. But the very difficult question that we need to answer is, as long as the engineering, the science did not come up with a way to store energy, there is still a problem when it comes to mass utilization of renewables. And this is a question that's not answered yet. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 30 years, maybe. But until today, other than traditional carbon energy and nuclear, it's still very difficult to think about energy, clean energy at scale. I think the Gulf states have been very, very clear about that, and they set the expectations, I think, in the right track.
Interesting. I think, something that came out quite a bit in your remarks is, of course, AI, Sam Altman, and so of course it's a big topic. It's something that everybody discusses at every meeting, and it's not easy to navigate the many experts that now are available on this topic. But I would try to stick to what AI can mean, let's say, for the region. In particular, we know that, of course, we have international regulations playing in managing the Mediterranean cybersecurity and data privacy challenges. How AI and data privacy challenges and cybersecurity are intertwined in the region, knowing that, of course, the region as well is trying to race towards adopting as much as AI as possible. But of course, we know that also, and I think as Europeans, we are very, let's say, we care a lot about how AI is regulated. So also how AI companies regulate this, protect this from cybersecurity attacks, protect this. So I will ask to you, Mothanna, just to give us a glimpse on the regulations and the development in the AI sector. Thank you.
Well, there's a global challenge and a regional challenge when it comes to regulation regarding AI. I mean, at the end, we who make the regulations are deciding on behalf of the people who will use it for years to come. And I don't think we get it. I mean, I'm an engineer. I study a lot to try to understand. But I mean, the AI that's moving industry is moving way faster than academia and definitely faster than politicians. And that's a huge global challenge. I mean, you've seen the conversations at the Congress with some technology companies. I mean, they're very decent people, congressmen, whatever, but they don't get it. They don't understand the technology. And it's a tough question on the globe. And I don't think there's an easy answer. And we need younger people to be part of the regulations. We need the users. I mean, governments have started banning stuff from all over the world. I mean, my nephew, who's 10 years old, is using TikTok while TikTok is banned in Jordan. They use it. It's simple. I mean, we need to make sure that we're not deciding on behalf of people who can overcome our decisions. That's one thing. And to do so, we need them to be part of the decision-making process when it comes to AI and the ethical use and whatever. Because actually, humanity have not agreed on what's ethical and what's not. In the real world, how about AI? There's a huge disagreement on what's ethical and what's not, at least in practice, not maybe on paper it's the same, but in practice it's not the same. So that will continue to be a problem. The real problem that people are worried about, which is the jobs, that's a problem that we can solve by policies, by making sure that we have continuous education. We need to repurpose our people, remodel the way we work, and reposition ourselves. Unless you do the 3 R's, repurpose, reposition, and remodel, you're going to become irrelevant to this globe and to the supply chain of this fast-moving world. That's on AI. On cybersecurity, it's becoming very costly. I mean, I've read an article in Forbes. I mean, on average, the attacks, the cyber leakage costs $4 million. I mean, when you do any business planning, nobody plans that he's going to have a loss of $4 million to his data in a few years. That's never part of the budget. I mean, now we need to put mitigation budgets for cybersecurity besides the cost of the infrastructure that we need to use. And that would create more jobs. And I mean, we can repurpose the people who have AI have made them lose their jobs in coding, for example, make them more focused on security. Every challenge is an opportunity, but it requires younger people who are more forward-looking, who get the problem to be able to solve it. Mm-hmm. We need to get younger people involved in the policymaking process in this part of the world and globally.
And Mohammed, what's your view on this? I mean, I know on Congress you might have some views, but in general, what's your view on AI and these I mean, the comments Mothanna gave?
So here's my view. This is clearly AI right now is more of a corporate-driven field, right? This is not really a country thing. This is Microsoft, the Googles of the world who are making the inroads. Of course, having an inclusive process that includes every single country on earth is a good thing, but this is not really the reality, right? So that's number one. Number two, you're going to have massive concentration of AI powers between few handful of states. That's a fact. Three, you are not going to really have regulations, quite honestly. You're going to have guidelines. You're going to have principles. The White House voluntary commitments is, I think, a way forward because it's hard to define, right? It's very hard to define, hard to say what's ethical, what's unethical, what we're going to do about applications, how we're going to do about utilization, how we're going to use this in military domain, what does it do to existing laws in that existing laws of war, of e-commerce, of cybersecurity. So clearly there are a lot of challenges that are not really unanswered, and I don't think that they will be answered. I think it would be a constant, it would be a moving target for us. And to add a final piece on this, I don't think it's actually something that could be regulated, quite frankly. If it's a moving target, how are you going to do that? And what exactly your benchmark? And who are you going to pick winners and losers? So, I mean, I'm a bit very skeptical about the question of regulations at this stage, at least. I'm engineering by training, and first thing I did after college was working on machine learning 15, 16 years ago. So for me, this is nothing about this is new. It has always been there. Different parameters, bigger parameters, of course, different user interface. But I don't think we are there yet. I think the one thing that keeps me worried is the idea of loss of jobs. This is not something that I take lightly because we're speaking about a lot of the jobs that we have today in the market are service economy jobs, right? Designers and graphics and sound engineers. So we're speaking about almost 45% almost of our workforce. Could be at risk of that. So I get the idea of retraining people. I support that. But to what extent? What's the percentage? And I think this is going to have a very major social and political ramifications on societies once we have these sort of tools utilized at scale.
Thank you, Mohammed. Melissa, do you have...
Thank you. This was a fascinating discussion. I do want to sort of zoom into the workforce development aspect, precisely because both Mohammed and Mothanna mentioned it, and the risks and threats associated with that for the global economy, but particularly in the MENA region, where there is already a very brutal reality of unemployment that is impacting not just the economic space, but it's impacting the political space, and will, and given the geopolitical dynamics and frankly, mood in the region currently with the war in Gaza, and how the West is being perceived, or at least seen as, basically as seen as complicit. There are so many more political ramifications than we can possibly imagine. And the reskilling and the upskilling can be done. But, and Mothanna, this, you were a minister, so you've worked with government. I've had my gig in government. The pace is very, very different. So how do you change that and get more people on board to be thinking about these challenges, not tomorrow, but yesterday? And you're not going to tackle all of it, but there are some ramifications that can be avoided. And where do you start that conversation? Is it also the private sector that could play a role in perhaps starting some of these conversations with education institutions? Like, who are the key stakeholders that need to move this forward?
Well, definitely the private sector has a role, but the private sector cannot pay the price of the inefficiency of the educational system. That's not their role. It's the government's responsibility to take care of that. I mean, as you said, we should start yesterday. At least in Jordan, I can speak a little bit about what we have done 4 years ago, where we created a program with the World Bank called Youth Technology and Jobs to be ready for this. We've put budget for upskilling, but we also wanted to start early at schools. So starting this year, we're going to start teaching digital skills, critical thinking, 21st century skills into the school curriculums in the public schools. We've made that program. Is it enough? No, it's not. It's going to be always harder. But this is a global question, and we can only fix part of it. And at least I know that technology gives us a room to serve global markets while our markets is small. I mean, Jordan is 11 million people. A good percentage of that is refugees with low purchasing power. You can never build your economy within the country. You can build your economy by tapping into global economies. You know how many doctors we have in Jordan right now? 42,000 doctors. Do you know how many doctors we will have in 6 years? 80,000. We're going to double the number of doctors, physicians in 6 years. Without technology, without them being able to use the huge investment we have made into their education, it's going to be a problem. And it's a problem. We have engineers that works as Uber drivers and as delivery captains all the way. That's why we're working on tapping into the semiconductors, the telemedicine, and we've done our economic modernization vision for the next 10 years, which has that focus on future services, high-value manufacturing, and many other things. So it all starts with the skills. And as Mohammed said, the Gulf is growing. That will be some brain drain for us, but that has been the case for the last 50 years. It has been always an unfair competition with the purchasing power, the salary power that they have in the Gulf, and they're taking our best engineers, but we keep producing more good engineers to make sure that we cover our needs. It's a challenging situation for smaller countries, but it's an opportunity for smaller countries because we have the power to dream big with our limited resources. It's the only way to survive and thrive is to have big dreams and use technology to tap into those global markets.
And if I may, I mean, with the brain drain, there's also like the uptick is of course an increase in remittances because
Which
a
I
lot
don't
of
get a lot on that actually.
okay.
It's being reduced. People are spending their money where they are, and it's their right to whatever. I mean, the life cost of life in the Gulf countries is not anymore as it was in the 80s and the 90s. You go there and you keep your money there. It's okay. We were happy to contribute to the prosperity of our neighboring countries, our brothers and sisters in the Gulf, and it's lowering our unemployment. But we need to produce more people, and we need to become the resilience partner. I mean, we can build the whole Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan has $200 billion of investment in China. They have decided a strategy called China Plus One. They want to have a plus one place besides China. I mean, Jordan could be one of those places, one plus places where you have factories, places, development centers, and we could use our free trade agreements, the geographical location, where Jordan becomes a launch pad to the region using the cost efficiency, the political stability, and the advanced infrastructure. We have an opportunity. We've been growing 19% year over year for the last 5 years in technology-enabled jobs. We've not been growing in other sectors. That's a clear signal that we need to focus where we can do well, which is technology.
And if I may, Mohammed, precisely because of this brain drain that is primarily going to the GCC, and of course the MENA region is a young region, and the demographic challenge in Europe is that it's the age structure is basically different. It's the opposite. Is there an opportunity there for more Euro-MENA collaboration? Or does that take also more political will to basically have that type of workforce development collaboration, given the challenges and the opportunities on both sides?
So here's my take about it. This model almost exists in an informal way. You have those Egyptian engineers and doctors, Jordanians, Moroccans, who are, I'm speaking about people who are doing professional services, mainly engineers and doctors all over Europe, people who immigrate in a legal way, got recruited by mostly German firms and Dutch firms. But the reality is, while Europe, of course, needs the manpower, the human resources, and getting talent from outside of the EU to fill the need that the EU clearly needs. There is a backlash against immigration. We also cannot really say that we're not really living in a rosy environment anymore. There's a clear backlash. We had a European election. Clearly, anti-immigration sentiment has moved to the center, quite honestly. So I agree with you. On paper, we should have more formalized agreement across the Mediterranean to think about talent and human resources, and that, quite honestly, has been the case across history between Alexandria to the Greek islands to southern France. However, this is not the case anymore. What's the way forward? It's hard for me to imagine a situation where there's a full ban on legal immigration coming from southern Mediterranean to the northern Mediterranean when it comes to jobs. But I think it's going to be a bit tough and difficult since it started to be part of a broader polarizing issue inside European democracies. So I'm a bit skeptical of that. I think I was very hopeful about this sort of prospects 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You had all these European companies moving full classes of engineers from Jordan and Egypt and Morocco to Eindhoven and Amsterdam and Rome and Edinburgh. You had the whole classes of engineers moving there, working on great projects. But I'm not really sure if this is something that we'll continue to see given how the political situation change. I mean, again, we have a European among our ranks here, so I invite his thoughts on this issue.
May I just comment? We don't need them to move. Technology allows us to work remotely. I mean, after COVID, everybody can work from anywhere. So we can stay considerate and sensitive to the European sensitivity regarding migration, and at the same time provide them the talent. I mean, I have statistics. I mean, Sweden alone lacks 60,000 developers. In Switzerland, 35,000 developers. I mean, the cumulative lack next year for developers is around 600, 700K software developers. They need the integration. And I mean, the unrealized business in Switzerland, not in Switzerland, I'll leave the country, in financial services alone is $1.2 trillion because of the lack of developers on Earth. So there's a lot of unrealized potential that our biggest problem, unemployment, is the solution to their biggest problem, which is the lack of resources. We need to make the two problems to work as an opportunity together. And technology allows us to respect all the sensitivities and migration antagonization that's happening right now. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I mean, I do agree with your pessimism on one side. On the other side, I do think that, and I do see some potential new agreements on legal pathways. What we saw in this new right-wing surge across Europe is that Israel and Italy was, and it's, let's say, the country where the government now is in that direction. But in the last couple of years, while they were in government, they were very pragmatic. They were one of the first to legalize some illegal workers already in Italy. Very high amount, the highest amount in the last 20 years. So yes, on one side, I do see, I'm pessimistic on illegal immigration, but I do see a pragmatic approach based on needs, of course, to legal pathways. So nothing concrete now, but that can be a way.
Over to you, Francesco.
I think the discussion was great. I do thank all of you for this possibility. I think it was really interesting to dive a little bit deeper on many issues around technology in the Middle East, of course, especially in the Gulf, but in the Middle East, I personally discovered a lot about Jordan. So thank you, Mothanna, as well. And I think we could see whether we can do specific focus on specific issues on this stream of work. So thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Mothanna. Thank you, Mohammed. And see you soon. And thank you for those of you who followed this event.
Thank you.